Let's return to Live from the State Capitol with Fred Dicker here on Talk 1300.
Well, I was talking with Lee Merengoff about the turnaround in attitudes of a lot of New Yorkers, especially upstate New Yorkers, about the direction of the state. They're feeling more optimistic. The Marist poll gives a lot of credit to the governor, who's got a 76% personal favorability, a pretty remarkable number. Joining us right now is a guy who represents a lot of upstate business interests, struggling to survive, to bring jobs to a job-depleted region of New York. I mean, most of the state, two-thirds of it's really upstate. He's Brian Sampson of Unshackle Upstate. Good morning, Brian. Thanks for being with us.
Oh, good morning, Fred. Thanks for having us on.
Sure. Us or just you?
Well, it's just me. But...
Oh, okay. Just want to make clear. I thought maybe you brought a group of people along.
No, we'll have a group of people there next week.
Well, you probably heard about this new Marist poll. It shows for the first time in almost 10 years, a majority of New Yorkers saying that the state is heading in the right direction, and the governor is getting very high marks, as we've seen in other polls. Before I ask you about this new study on New York that you wanted to talk about that just come out, what do you think about those numbers? Do you feel that at all? Do you sense that people are feeling better?
Absolutely. I get the opportunity to travel all over upstate New York, and invariably wherever I go, I get the question of, I'm feeling better, should I feel better? And our answer is absolutely. When you look at the budget from last year, big spending cuts, no new taxes and fees. You couple that with the budget that's been proposed this year, the property tax cap. I mean, there's good reason for New Yorkers to be very optimistic, and there is a glimmer of light on the horizon. I think a lot of it is attributable to the governor, but then also both houses of the legislature and how they're working with him to make sure that we do start to change that national and global image of New York being the supposed tax capital of the world.
What about the prospect for natural gas drilling, so-called hydrofracking in the southern tier, which could bring tens of thousands of jobs there, and also the governor's proposal for casino gambling, commercial casino gambling, not just Indian exclusive casino gambling? Those two things, are they, do you think, affecting people's attitudes upstate?
Yeah, I don't think the casino gambling one is. That's not one I hear about. Obviously, Marcellus Shale and the safe development of natural gas is certainly an issue on our agenda and many others, and we see that as certainly an opportunity when you consider that New York State imports roughly 95% of the natural gas we use, and as it comes up from the Gulf, there are a series of pipes and checks that, there's a new tax here and a fee there. So if we can develop this in New York State and do it in an environmentally safe way, it should lower our natural gas, provide us with a clean burning fuel for the environment. So we're encouraged by it. I think other people are encouraged by it. Obviously, there's a little bit of concern, when we see some senators, come out and ask for another one-year moratorium. We've studied this for 4 years. Everyone's had an opportunity to comment. It's now up to DEC to put the plan in place and for us to start, drilling some wells in 2012.
Well, it also holds the prospect of not only lowering gas prices for people's home heating fuels, but of attracting lots of businesses that manufacturing, industrial businesses that utilize natural gas in processes, whether it's the chemical industry or steel. The idea that possibly there could be a rebirth of some steel industry in New York, Buffalo was once the center of it, is certainly appealing to a great many people, although not to the people who just hate any kind of commercial operations, especially industrial ones.
Well, and it's absolutely correct, Fred. And, what it brings is an opportunity that New York just currently doesn't have right now. And if we do it the right way, learn from the mistakes of some other, states to make sure that we're doing it the right way, we've got a great opportunity. And the jobs that can be created are innumerable. The financial impact to the local governments in the state, you're talking billions of dollars. And I just don't see how we can walk away from that opportunity. But, if it's not done the right way, that's what has people's, concerns right now. But
they have these activists out there who are fanning the flames of fears and are getting local towns, villages, counties to try to pass regulations to block it, even as we have a State Department of Environmental Conservation, which is populated with a bunch of very radical, in my view, environmentalists put there by the likes of Eliot Spitzer and George Pataki and David Patterson, reviewing this as if they are going to just kind of go into the tank. The expectation is that, in fact, they may even adopt or recommend recommendations that the gas drilling industry can't even live with. They're going to be so strict. But yet you have the environmentalists out there fighting these fights on the local level, trying to get often ignorant local officials to pass bans to try to stop this industry from growing in New York.
Fred, I was in the Southern Tier on Tuesday giving some presentations and some talks. And invariably, I'm there, and I always get the question, why do you support Marcellus Shale? It's, it's dirty, it's environmentally unsafe, the hazards are immense. And the one person continued to badger me a little bit, and I finally asked the question of, can you tell me yesterday, how many planes crashed in the world? And they said, well, I don't know. And I said, how many planes landed safely? Well, I don't know. Exactly. The point is, we hear about all the negative things, yet you don't hear about any of the positive things. And the industry has to get its act together to make sure that it is talking about the positive impacts of a safe development of Marcellus Shale will have here in New York State. And if they can do that, I think we'll move forward. If they can't, then the other side is going to win, and New York's going to unfortunately walk away from a tremendous opportunity.
I don't agree with you. It's not a public referendum, and the governor has indicated that he doesn't care necessarily whether you have 800 people screaming on one side and only 50 on the other, that this is going to be a decision based on science and engineering, and if the science and engineering shows it can be done safely, you can't stop it. By the way, homeowners, as you know, or landowners who have this gas, have a right to sue the state if the state acts arbitrarily in denying them the right to exploit the mineral wealth that's there. I mean, if you had a gold mine and some local people are saying, well, you can't mine that gold, you can imagine what the reaction would be. Well, these local people are lucky enough to have gold mines on their property, and they have a right to exploit that as long as there's no showing it can prove that in so doing they would be endangering their communities or the state. So it's going to be interesting. It's already in court, as you know. By the way, just as the last point on this, it's interesting now that President Obama appears to be on the side of the drillers, too, and those who want to exploit the natural gas wealth.
And I think that was a surprise for many people. And Fred, your point of the science and technology should be the determining factor.
Of course.
That this gets done. Absolutely.
Brian, what is this new report out again today that shows, and I say again today because it's another report apparently showing that New York is one of the least competitive places or attractive places for the private sector to do business in. Why don't you tell us about that?
Yeah, the Tax Foundation issues an annual study of which states have the least effective business tax climate or the least popular. And, of course, for a number of years, New York is ranked right near the bottom. And, it again demonstrates that New York has challenges in front of it as we're ranked 49th, only New Jersey is worse. So from our standpoint, that means that while we have made progress in the last year, we went from 50th in property taxes to 45th in this study. We have a regulatory environment, and Marcellus Shale is sort of a good example of that we need to fix in order to send a very good message to private sector employers, and that is be here in New York, continue to develop, your jobs. That regulatory environment is certainly because of overreaching agencies, and that's what we need our legislature to take a good hard look at this year and in coming years. How are you going to fix the regulatory burden that sits in front of every private sector employer? You fix that, you help every company create new jobs. It's not just, through the regional councils or other economic incentives. We need to fix that burden.
Well, we hear about that every year, as you well know, Brian. The Business Council always talks about that, Unshackle, Upstate, and other groups. I mean, shouldn't it be incumbent, and maybe this has already been done, I'm sure it's been done to some degree, but shouldn't it be incumbent on groups like yours that want to see this happen to come forward with specific proposals, make them public? Why don't you give a top 10 list, if you haven't already, of burdensome and stupid regulations or unjustifiable regulations, and try to get some prominent legislators, whether it's Speaker Silva or Senator Skelos, to weigh in on where they stand on those, and the governor as well. Is there such a list, and have you thought of doing that if you haven't put one together?
Yes, we have our policy agenda that we released earlier this month that identifies what those are. And the funny thing is, Fred, when you look at these things, New York State doesn't have a great deal of money to invest in what's going on.
Well, the governor just talked about $1 billion in Buffalo.
Absolutely. Great for Buffalo. Let's put that money to work and create private sector jobs. But we still don't have a whole lot of money. So the best thing that you can do that will cost you absolutely nothing is to fix the regulatory environment. And when we look at things like, you want to talk about a very ludicrous one that employers are going through right now, the Wage Theft Prevention Act.
This is where they have to make every employee in the state sign a statement and notify them. This came out of the blue. It's a new burden that was put on last year, right?
Exactly. So where almost every employer in the state of New York uses a payroll company and gives a pay stub to their employees that lists very clearly what you're being paid, now they have to take the additional step of getting everybody to sign off on this. So when you look at construction companies that have people in multiple locations or multinational companies that have headquarters here in New York State and have satellite offices, they now have to get every employee to sign that sheet, keep it in their file, and it says what they're getting paid. I mean, let's be honest here. That is perhaps the signatory issue of how ridiculous government can be and the burdens that it puts on people.
Well, I don't remember when it passed. I assume it may have had something to do with the hiring of illegals in New York City, maybe in the restaurant business. There are always these exposés on it. But to apply it to the whole state, I think, is questionable. But what did the governor say when he signed it? He's supposed to be, friendly to business when New York's open for business. Do you recall what he said at the time? Why did he sign this rather than vetoing it?
Well, I'm not sure if it was something that this governor signed. I think it could have been his predecessor put it into place.
I thought it was passed last year, but I'll stand corrected on that if I'm wrong.
Well, and I thought it was passed previous, so we can correct that. So, but, what they say is exactly what you're pointing out, that there are organizations in the state of New York that are telling their employees one thing and doing something completely different. It is typically a New York City-driven issue and a construction-related issue, but so you don't then pass a law that says when 95% of the employers are doing things the right way and are good people in their communities, that you punish them with a law that 5% of the people are violating. It's just one of those things that it just sends that message to business owners about, really, again, why is New York the one with this law?
It may be that you're right, Brian, that it took effect last year. It sounds like the kind of thing that wouldn't have gotten through the Republican-controlled Senate if it was offered up last year. It may very well be one of the things that the Democratic-controlled Senate had voted to approve.
It was passed in obviously in both houses, and that's why it was sent up to the governor. So, but again, it's one of those feel-good things that people don't see the long-term impact or
don't care about it.
Or they don't care about it.
Right. I think that's equally the case. By the way, what did you make of that decision by the Adirondack Park Agency the other day, which was wonderful news up in the Adirondacks and Tupper Lake in particular, a 10-1 vote to give a go-ahead for a rare kind of ski resort home building project that's been in the works for some 8 years. It took 8 years of regulatory hurdles before this thing was finally approved.
Well, it's fantastic. And again, I think it points to this administration and their willingness to be open and receptive to different ideas and different processes and thoughts on how things can get done. Clearly, when you talk to my friends up in the North Country, they will tell you the APA has long been an impediment to economic development in that region.
Without a doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. So
it was supposed to be, by the way. The question was, to what degree would it be?
Exactly, but it's perhaps, again, one of those things that we can look at and say, here's another organization, an agency, an authority that is overstepping its bounds and being too overly protective. When you look at construction in New York State right now and the technologies that are being used, they're so much better than they were 5, 10, even 15 years ago. We should allow them to do what is right. And Tupper Lake needs the jobs and the North Country needs the jobs, so it's good to see that project move forward.
I agree. In terms of political figures on the New York horizon right now, have you had any encounters with his fellow Mark Senindella, who's a very wealthy, relatively young businessman, the founder of Ladders.com, who's eyeing a race for U.S. Senate?
Yeah, the good thing about Unshackle Upstate, Fred, is I don't have to worry about things at the federal level. We have our hands here full.
Well, it's a New York State Senate seat, though. It's the U.S. Senate.
No, I think, again, I haven't had any interaction with him. Everything I have read, obviously, he's a gentleman. He seems to be very smart. He created a very good organization. And
a great company.
I think anytime we can get somebody from the business community, whether Republican or Democrat, to run for office, I think it's better. They have a different mentality. They look at things very differently. They understand the role that government should play in economic development and job creation, and that is government should create the environment to create jobs. Government itself cannot create those jobs. So I think having someone with his mentality running could be a very good thing for New York.
Does Unshackle Upstate endorse candidates? And do you have a PAC? Remind me about that, whether you do or not. Do you make political contributions?
Yeah, we do have a PAC, and we do endorse candidates. 2010 was the first year we issued our pro-business, pro-taxpayer scorecard. We'll be doing that again this year. Our 2012 one will obviously come out sometime after session. Our goal has been and always will be. Don't care if you're a Democrat or Republican. If you are supporting our four core pillars, which are reduce spending, reduce taxes, reduce mandates, and reduce debt, we want to find a way to help you get into office, because that's what we need right now is a New York that's focused on the fact that we spend enough money right now and we raise enough in taxes. We don't need to do more of each. What we need is to fix the laws and fix the regulatory environment, allow our local elected officials to put that money to use where it's most appropriate and gets the best opportunity for New Yorkers. And if you take on that platform, we'd certainly try to find a way to make sure that those people get helped into office.
Are any of the Native American tribes, the Indian tribes that are involved with gambling in New York, members of Unshackle Upstate?
No.
Okay.
No. And,
do you have a position on casino gambling, the governor's proposal to legalize commercial, I guess it could be called commercial casino gambling, that would compete or could supersede the Native American gambling that's going on now?
No, we haven't taken on that issue or even done any research into it. It's one of those things that just, to us, it doesn't necessarily fit into our agenda, and my board just hasn't reviewed it yet.
In terms of a draw, though, for tourism, for some of the, not some, but dying cities like Buffalo, presumably if there was a national-class Vegas-style casino resort set up, that could be something that could stimulate the economy dramatically, wouldn't you think, in certain regions?
Well, I certainly think that that's the argument that's out there right now, and tourism is a very big industry for New York State, and certainly if we can enhance our ability to draw people to the state, we should look into that. But on the issue of casino gaming, we haven't taken a position as of yet.
Well, listen, I thank you for joining us this morning. I wish you luck with Unshackle Upstate. Brian, thanks for being with us.
It was a pleasure, Fred. Thanks for having us on.
Okay, this is Fred Dicker live at the State Capitol. I was Brian Sampson of Unshackle Upstate. We're going to take a break, and we'll be right back.